Hi everyone, this is Nancy J. Welcome to my morning thoughts, although it's creeping into the afternoon here. Today I'm just a little bit later in getting this going. I came out here early this morning, but it began to sprinkle just a little bit and then some friends showed up, so I had to put this a little on hold. So finally I'm back at it again with a few thoughts for today. Today I'm landing in the book of Judges. I'm looking at chapter 4 and 5. Just as a reminder, if you're new listening to my just short little words here for the morning, you may hear a car going by, you could hear a helicopter, and since it's Saturday, you may even hear a race car being tuned up and loaded on the neighbor's car, and there goes my neighbors going by waving at me right now. I guess I'm going to have to set my little table up here and look at the wall next time. But it is kind of great to be able to share a few thoughts about God's Word in a very relaxed setting and neighborhood on a Saturday. So back to my thoughts for today. I've got my Bible open to the book of Judges, chapter 4 and 5. This morning as I walked about and did a few things for my Saturday morning, I was rolling around in my mind Deborah. Deborah as a leader. Deborah as taking people into war. Deborah as a woman settling disputes. She was the person that settled disputes as a judge. For instance, we read in, chapter 4, verse 5. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites came to her to have their disputes decided. So is what went on in her life as a leader. That's what she did. She handled disputes. I think of on a childhood level, when you have your children come to you, say two of them, and they come to you and the other one saying this one did that and that one did that, and if it's something serious, some things we can just kind of throw aside and say go back and play, quit picking at one another. But then there's other things that are rather serious that we need to sit down with both of them or pull them apart or whatever and get to the bottom of what's going on here. Well, for Deborah, I believe that's what, as a leader and one who settled disputes, what her life was about as a leader. She settled conflict. She stood in the middle of conflict. We don't think of this very often when we think of a sales rep, unless you've been one. When you are a salesperson, now I'm not talking retail, but the kind when you're out on the road where you are going to people, they're not coming to you, and problems begin to happen because they just happen. I mean, sometimes someone makes a mistake. It could be me. It could be someone in the office. It could be a customer. It could be one of my purchasers that I meet with. It could be someone overhead of them, overriding them. But is where I stood. I don't know about anyone else in this type of industry I was in, but for me, I stood in the middle of all of them. I wasn't the owner of the company, but I was in charge of my account. So, for instance, I think I may have shared this story before, but I had one account that my company had at one time that was a very good account, and by the time I got there, they were gone. So I would kind of look through those names, and sometime I'd try and go re-recruit them as a customer again. So I had one man that I decided, I just got stubborn on it, I wanted to meet with this purchaser. And he really wasn't willing to meet with me. And I said, well, instead of me trying to sell you something, I'm not asking you to buy anything. Let's just sit down. Just give me 15 minutes. Let's just sit down, not on the phone, but let's just sit down and discuss. And so he allowed me to come in, and the short story is we sat down and discussed this. He stood up. He was very, very, very angry. I just sat there and listened. I wasn't in physical danger, but he was very angry, and I sat there and listened to him. And when he was done, this is what I said. After everything that you just shared with me, what was the one or two things, maybe more, that we could have did to keep you as one of our customers? And he came up with one little thing. It was one. And is what it sounded little, but it was big for him because it was information he had to turn in to someone that was above him as he led the purchasing department. So it was a big thing. But I didn't come back to the office and argue with everyone. I just let them know. I didn't let them know his yelling. I just gave them the one thing that we needed to do. So what that took was, it took a lot of wisdom, because I'm standing in the middle. I have to look at, as a rep in that situation, in my everyday life. I had to do, in ministry, we have this thing going around now, we call it a 360 degrees. But what I had to do was, I'll use those words, a 360 degree, which means I'm looking at all angles. I'm listening to the customer. I talked to the rep that used to have the account. I talked to our accounting department and looked at what the sales figures were. If there was any problems there, I talked to customer service, which when I talked to customer service, we had someone new, so they had no recollection or past on what is going on. But think of Deborah when people came to her. Let's go back to her. When people came to her with their disputes, she was in a position that she must make a decision. Throughout her life as a judge, there would be decisions that she made. And so today, as I just continue to kind of mull her around and meditate on her, and then look at her in her time where she was as a woman, and bring her into today, for men and women, I guess this is a part 3 on wisdom. We all need wisdom, whether we are a leader like Deborah, serving in a judge position, whether we are someone like me as I was a sales rep, or even now if I lead a group, setting out to plant a church and working with equipping and training of people. Leaders need to be good listeners, good leaders, and that's what I'm going to leave this at today. Good leaders are good listeners. And those who slam doors, usually they'll still probably going to be a leader, but it's going to be a little bit harder for them. There's going to be a lot of what I call unfinished business, because it wasn't talked through what the issue, whatever that issue was. Like, I didn't have to go and see this man that was a past customer. When I walked out that door, if I would have been angry, I didn't even have to bring him back on board, but he did agree to come back with us again. And so him and I became, I'm going to call it, we highly respected one another. In fact, he came to me a few years later and asked for a reference for a very large corporate purchasing position. I have no idea where he is now, but that is something that God brings back to my mind to use in the area of wisdom. So is there some area today that you need to apply wisdom? Is it in your home, with your children, with your husband, with your wife, your ministries, your job, your neighbors, wherever that is? I call wisdom as this. Wisdom usually is take a step back, not necessarily physically, but in your mind. Take a step back and take a look at the situation and say, God, what is your perspective on this? And then, what is your way you desire me to handle this? And it's not always hearing a prompting from the Lord. It may be He shows you something in God's Word or in His Word. For instance, when I'm talking about Deborah this morning, the word disputes came to my mind because Christian leaders serve people, and disputes come up, and there are leaders that won't even handle disputes. And there are some that they do have the wisdom of knowing what to step in and what to step out of. And so that is what is my heart today, is to share with you a little about wisdom, a little about leaders and disputes that go on in our everyday life. So if you have any comments or questions on what I've shared today, just email me at relationshipswithnancy@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I'd love to hear your comments, or even if you have any prayer requests. So I just thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and just have a great, enjoyable Saturday.